Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at one of the Grade 1 events on Travers Saturday at Saratoga. Race 10 is the H. Allen Jerkens, this one going the 7 furlong distance for the 3-year-olds, and this kicks off a series of 3 Grade 1 7 furlong races in a row leading up to that Travers, and they are all really interesting races to handicap. We'll have previews of each and every one of them up on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel this week. And speaking of the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel, you do want to check out the new podcast that we launched recently. It's called Off the Track. Our colleague Gino Picola has been hosting it. He's had some great guests on that you definitely want to check out. Interviews with Katie Davis, Kendrick Carmouche. He had Mark Casse on recently prior to his victory with Nitrogen in the Alabama last week. I think he's going to have champion trainer Doug O'Neill on in the coming week. So you definitely want to check out Off the Track, which you can do on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Let's take a look at the field for this H. Allen Jerkens, Mike, and 8 runners signed on, but boy, is this a wildly competitive race where you could make strong cases for just about every horse in this field. And I went back and forth a lot with this morning line, kind of tinkering with it to see where I thought the prices would land, because it's a tricky race to handicap and a tricky race to know how they're going to bet it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It's one of the more intriguing races on the card, just because you have horses coming from so many different directions here. There's just so much going on in this race. Baffert sent 3 over. You got the Woody Stevens winner. You have Chancellor McPatrick, who won the Hopeful here last year. He's turning back in distance again. Verifire undefeated, could be anything at this point, but he's stepping way up in class. This is a really, really good race.
Yeah, you mentioned you got those 3 Bob Baffert trainees in here. It sounds as of now like they're all planning to run, even though there are forwardly placed horses. And speaking of how this pace could work out, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. And one of those Baffert trainees is shown leading early, the number 2 Midland Money. And Mike, I can totally see that. This horse has shown a ton of early speed in both career starts, albeit not against stakes company, but being how lightly raced he is, it does feel like the game plan with him almost has to be to go forward. And we'll see who can run with him early. I mean, both of the other Baffert horses, Barnes and Madaket Road, they've got some tactical speed. Smoken Wicket's never that far out of it. Verifire is a horse that has led in the past. So it's pretty easy to see this fast pace that's flagged actually developing on the track.
Yeah, I agree that the pace could certainly get fast. Midland Money, he certainly looked like a fast horse the 2 times that we've seen him, but there are other horses that can keep up with him. I would even, as far as the pace goes, I'd even maybe throw Patch Adams into the mix here. The pace projector has him a little bit further back, but this horse has speed and he's got the rail, David. I'm not sure how many options they really have.
No, the fact that Patch Adams is shown 7th fastest on this pace projector just speaks to how much speed is in this race. And it's going to be a real rider's race to see who breaks well and who goes forward from the start. Let's go through this field, beginning with that horse that Mike just brought up, the number 1, Patch Adams. I picked him as the lukewarm 3-1 morning line favorite on the basis of this most recent performance that we'll take a look at when he became a Grade 1 winner going this 7 furlong distance at Saratoga in the Woody Stevens. The other horse highlighted that he's running past in the stretch here is one of those Baffert trainees, Madaket Road. We'll get to him at the end of this preview. But Mike, Patch Adams, I thought got a very good trip on this occasion. While he was drawn towards the inside in post 4, his 2 main pace rivals were also inside of him. So it gave him the opportunity to sort of sit in a position where he was perched outside of them, pounced at the top of the stretch, and there wasn't a whole lot of running going on from the back of the pack there. He's been really good since they've turned him back to sprinting, which is probably what he's always wanted to do. But he is drawn the rail here, and he might get a different trip than last time.
Yeah, it feels like we kind of feel the same way about him. And first of all, I also felt like the Woody Stevens was just a really good spot for him. And he delivered. He was you made him the lukewarm favorite here. He was a lukewarm favorite in that race. And he got the job done off of a really good trip. It was another step in the right direction for him. You're right to point out that he's clearly a sprinter. This is a good distance for him. And he doesn't need the lead. So listen, if they outbreak him and he doesn't make the lead, that's probably okay for him. But I'm still worried about what kind of trip he's going to get. And I feel like this race is tougher than the last one. If he's going to be one of the favorites in here, I'll probably try to beat him.
The number 2, Midland Money, is the first of that Baffert trio that we'll discuss. And I was mentioning earlier, Mike, he's shown a lot of early speed in both career starts. On debut last summer, then was off for a long time after that, but came back in this allowance race in early August at Saratoga. We'll take a look at the stretch run where he got sent hard to the lead from the beginning by Flavia and Pratt, secured the front end, and just basically runs this field off their feet to win by over 3 lengths at the end. And the Beyer speed figures certainly said that he belongs stepping up against Grade 1 One company assigning him a 100 buyer speed figure for this performance. Now, you look at the horse behind him, Mike, it clearly is not the level of competition that he'll be facing here, but he's still a horse that just has nothing but upside ahead of him.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting to see how he stacks up here, because obviously this is a significant step up in class. But this horse, first of all, forget the figure that he got for his debut win.
Yeah.
He was serious in that race. He just sort of glided away from that field really impressively. I feel like that last race too. I think to me the big takeaway for that last race, even going into it, was, why did Baffert send this horse over here to run in an allowance race? I think he sent him over because he knew that this was going to be the next race for Midland money. I think they had a lot of confidence in this horse. He was really good in that race. And he, at least, to my eye, he did not look like he was fully cranked up in the paddock before that race. I think he's going to really benefit from that performance. I think this horse is good. It'll be interesting to see what kind of price he is.
There are a few tough calls in this race, Mike, and probably none more so than the next Baffert trade. We'll take a look at the number 3 Barnes, a horse who was hyped to the gills for his first couple of starts when he won at 1-5 odds, shipping to Churchill Downs to make his debut, then won the San Vicente, and there was talk of him being the Derby favorite after that, despite having never run 2 turns before. When he actually got onto the Kentucky Derby trail, things didn't quite work out. He actually ran pretty well when he first went 2 turns behind Journalism in the San Felipe. Got a 105 buyer for that race, which would make him very competitive against this field. But then, there were reports about him not training well going into the Santa Anita Derby. They ran him there anyway. It kind of felt like they weren't even trying to win that race. They rated him. He went backwards, and he went to the sidelines after that. He's now returning from a layoff, and Baffert is shipping him all the way across the country to run in a Grade 1 sprint, which feels like, having watched Baffert over the years, that feels like it's a good sign for this horse's prospects moving forward. And I've watched the workouts, which you can do if you look them up on First TV. This horse seems like he's back to his old self. He's working really well into this race.
Yeah, his works do look tremendous on the way in. And he's sort of giving off that impression now that he's just a sprinter anyway. I mean, I guess he was, number 1 on the Baffert Derby depth chart for about 5 minutes, but it didn't really work out. I really did like his first 2 races, though, sprinting. He's obviously good. He's got a lot of talent. There are things working against him here, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'd love to take, some kind of short price on him if they bet him in here, but I think he's super dangerous.
I did find this DRF formulator fact for Baffert that obviously applies to all 3 runners in this race. And I just bring this up, Mike, because for so many years, especially going back to the pre-2020 era, horses like this that Baffert's shipping in for this H. Allen Jerkens, it was almost considered must use, these horses, because they just ran well over and over again. Baffert had so much success shipping into these big days in New York and Grade 1 races. And over the past 5 years, it just hasn't been the case. He's won a few of them, but not at the same rate that he has. And obviously what happened with Medina Spirit and some of the suspensions afterwards, they brought down the sample size a little bit, but it just felt like Baffert has not been winning these big races that he ships to quite as much as he did in the past.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't seem like he participates in them that much anymore either. When you sent that stat over, I started to think about it a little bit, because it feels like he used to have a much bigger presence in these races, and he doesn't anymore. But it also does. It felt like he hasn't been winning as many of them, and this stat just confirms it.
The number 4, Chancer McPatrick, will be again turning back in distance to try to improve upon his form sprinting, something he attempted to do in the Grade 1 Woody Stevens, and it didn't work out that day. He was towards the back early, had a little bit of traffic to deal with an upper stretch, but there was really no running going on from the back of the pack, and none from Chancer McPatrick, who just kind of split the field at the end behind Patch Adams and Madaket Road. They stretched him back out in distance in the restricted Curlin Stakes last time. We'll take a look at the stretching of that race, Mike, and he shows some real grit to earn this victory, because he rages up at the top of the stretch like he's going to be a danger to his stablemate, and then both of them get swarmed from the outside by So Sandy, and it looks like Chancer McPatrick is going to have to settle for second or third, but he surges again between horses to get the job done here. So in my opinion, this kind of puts to rest that notion that he can't go 2 turns, because he did it here. And it's kind of curious that now they're bypassing the Travers to turn back in distance in this Grade 1 race. My concern, Mike, is he still a Grade 1 horse as a 3-year-old?
I'm worried about that too. And listen, I give him the credit he deserves for winning that Curlin. Not only for all the things that you point out, but also when you watch that on, you can see that horse that he outfinished there was really coming in and bumping him towards the end. He still fought that horse off. The flip side of that is he was also given an absolute perfect trip overall from Irad Ortiz. I don't know, David. I share your concerns about how good he is anymore. Whether he's gone on as a 3-year-old. Is he a sprinter or is he a router? I have no idea. I don't like his races enough to want to bet him in here, but I get that there's a case to be made for him.
The number 5, Verifire, is the other Brad Cox trainee in this race. And he's another one, Mike, that has done very little wrong in his career. 3 for 3, all of his victories by open lengths, and feels like one of the major players coming into this race, even though he's stepping up out of a listed stakes race. That Max field attracted a pretty strong field at Churchill Downs, and he beat a horse in Smoken, we'll get to in just a little bit, who feels like another strong contender in this race. And Verifire was clearly better than him that day, but he did win that race with a great trip, just perched outside of 2 speeds that kind of went after each other on the front end. And this is going to be a bit of a class test. And I'll just note, Mike, I like to watch the workouts. I did watch the workout when he worked in company with Patch Adams back on August 9th. And I know Patch Adams is a good workhorse, but Patch Adams got the better of him at the end and was galloping out ahead of Verifire for whatever that's worth.
That's worth something to me. It's not something that I had noticed, so I'm going to take that into account. This horse is good. All 3 of his races are good. You could see it on his debut that he had a lot of talent, and he sort of confirmed it in 2 wins since then. But that being said, this is a significant. It was a good field. You're right last time. This is still a significant step up in class for this horse. It feels like he's not going to be that much price in here. I won't be surprised when he runs well, but I'm not betting this horse against this field.
Mike, I know he's had a lot of chances, but the number 6 Smoken might be coming in off the best last race of anybody in this field when he won the local prep for this in the Grade 2 Amsterdam. I know you don't expect a big jump forward from a horse like this in the 13th start of his career, but boy, was this impressive as we take a look at the replay. I mean, he was sitting off an honest pace. It's not like they were going slowly up front, and as soon as Brian Hernandez Jr. asked him at the top of the stretch, he just kicks into another gear and puts this field away. And these are a lot of the same horses that Patch Adams was beating by a similar margin in the Woody Stevens. And I know that was a Grade 1 race, and this is a Grade 2, but I think Smoken Wicket's performance here stacks up well against the horse that I think could be favored in this H. Allen Jerkens. And when you start to take apart his form and just isolate the dirt sprint races, it looks a lot more positive, and I think he's a major player in this spot.
I agree. I think he's a horse that I want to use right back. I know that it was a weaker field that he beat last time, but he beat them convincingly, and he did it in fast time. And as you've already sort of been referencing, he was a little bit better than he looked on paper heading into that race anyway. The other thing that I really like about him, David, is he's got speed, but he's pace adaptable, man. If they go fast in front of him, he's going to be able to sit a little bit and still make a run into this race. I think he's dangerous right back.
The number 7, Captain Cook, he could be the biggest price of anybody in this race, but a horse that you can make a case for, and I'll actually try to do so right now because, Mike, he's a horse that they tried to go longer with for a lot of his career. They put him on the Kentucky Derby Trail, ran in races like the Withers and Wood Memorial, and I think in the latter of those, he kind of proved that 9 furlongs is just a little bit too far for him. They tried to go that distance again in the Peter Pan, because it was just the next race that came up in New York and ran pretty well, but again, couldn't quite see off the trip. They turned him back to the 7 furlong distance in the Max field. And while he was beaten by the 2 horses that we just talked about in Verifire and Smoken Wicked, I didn't love the trip that Captain Cook got because he was aggressively sent to the lead that day, even turning back a faster pace that he had encountered in any of his prior races. And yeah, he got past to the top of the stretch, but then he got angled out by a Router Ortiz, and he was still trying all the way through the wire and actually galloped out ahead of Smoken Wicked in the later stages of that race. And I do feel like this horse wants the 7 furlongs. And from this outside post, I think he's going to have more of a chance to relax back off the pace, especially with the blinkers coming off. I am curious, though, Mike, what you make of this trainer switch to Todd Pletcher.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. I noticed that actually pretty late in the game after I was done looking at the race that I realized, oh, he's not even with Dutrow anymore. Yeah. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter. They're going to make an equipment change here, which I don't know. I don't know about how I feel about that. I just, everything else though, I just want to let your analysis stand there because I agree with all of it. This is a horse who's going to get a different trip this time, and it could make a difference. And you could tell in some of those prep races where I guess they were thinking Derby, he didn't really want to go that far. This is a way better situation for him. It just happens to also be a way tougher race. So we'll see how he handles it.
Yeah, but I'll just say about the trainer switch, the Dutrow barn has been pretty cold for a few months now, and this is an owner that has almost all their best horses with Todd Pletcher. So, I mean, it's not that surprising that trying a Grade 1 race, this horse would wind up in that barn. The number 8, Madaket Road, is the third of the 3 Baffert runners that we'll talk about in this race, Mike. And It's really hard to knock this horse. I mean, he runs well just about every time. I know he only has one win on his resume, but he's run in a slew of graded stakes races, gives a good account of himself. I didn't feel like he had major excuses in too many of those races, but I do feel like they're finally concentrating on what this horse wants to do, going one turn on the dirt.
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff. Hey, listen, he's fine. I don't really have any knocks on him, and it feels like he's going to be the best price of the Baffert horses. And I'm not sure, how far he is behind his stablemates in this race. The Stevens last time, he did sort of lunge and stumble at the start, and then he had to rush up into that race. I still didn't think it was a huge excuse for him. I just felt like he wasn't good enough to get the job done there, but he ran fine.
Let's go to picks for a fascinating edition of the Grade 1 H. Allen Jerkens. And Mike, I see we're landing in slightly different spots here. We actually got the same two horses in the second and third spots, just flip-flopped. And I think we agree that Barnes and Smoken and Wicked make a lot of sense in this race. But you're going to go for that horse with upside, probably the biggest price of the Bafferts in Midland money.
Yeah, I understand that this is a really tough race for this horse, and maybe he just won't be up for it. I've been really impressed with both of his races, and I just feel like the way that Baffert's handled him since he's come back from the layoff suggests that he thinks he's pretty good too.
And I put the number 7, Captain Cook, on top. He's going to need a lot of things to go right if he's to win this race, but I do think this horse is finally getting into the right kind of spot at the right distance, and he might get a different trip this time, sitting just off the pace. And if he handles it, I think he might have the talent to step with this field at what is going to be maybe the biggest price of all of them. 7, 6, 3, 1 for me, and 2, 3, 6, 5 for Mike in the Grade 1 H. Allen Jerkens on Travers Saturday. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.